Welcome back to another episode of The Machine is the Message. I'm one of your co-hosts, Alan Smith, and with me today is...
Hello, I'm Patrick Keenan, and I'm excited to dive into all things tech, AI, design, Toronto, etc.
I don't know, that wasn't very convincing, dude. Have you had enough coffee yet today? What's going on?
I've probably had too much coffee. I'm like past peak, but yeah, let's go. Let's go.
Let's get fired up. All right. So last time I wanted to talk about a few different things. We talked about product strategy in the AI world. Actually, I have an addendum to that as well. And this is, maybe a small thing. And then I also wanted to talk about this. The second thing I wanted to talk about was the machine is the message and the medium is the message, Marshall McLuhan. And then lastly, I wanted to go through all the links that we didn't have a chance to go through last time. And I looked at a couple of them and I was feeling super freaked out. I was like, dude, it's going too fast. I'm freaking out, man. And since then I got messages from a bunch of devs that I know who are like, I don't sleep anymore. I just make stuff with Claude Code all the time because I can make so much stuff. And so that feels like the energy of the moment. If you're listening to this in a couple of years, that's the vibe that we're living in today.
Yeah, feels like something is changing every day, and the only way you can keep up is if you're unemployed. Is basically where you're at.
And actually, some of the guys who were sending me stuff were like in between things and just like so stoked to not have a job and to be able to just build their own stuff every day. Honestly, not much different than being a developer in the past. Like, devs just want a dev, right? Like, it's a huge part of it. Okay, so first thing I wanted to share was I was thinking about this product idea of, okay, so when you're like old software, you would have to like log in and then you would click on things and it would kind of like bring you information. It was basically like a view on a database, right? We talked about this last time. Old software was for people. New software is people. There's this kind of space in between. Like I was watching, my wife use ChatGPT and I'm stoked for her. She's doing really well. So like, she's like finally onto it. I'm seeing what she's doing. I'm like, okay. That's cool. I never thought of that use case. And she's doing things I wouldn't have expected. And then she closes ChatGPT and it's kind of done. So there's this like, then you think about the OpenClaw people who are like, yeah, I'm buying as many Mac minis as I can and spinning up like 40,000, OpenClaw agents to become my army to do all this stuff while I'm sleeping. Like that's different, right? Like if you and me are working on a team, when we like close a meeting, I'm still working at the company and you're still working at the company, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas with ChatGPT, it's like you kind of, or like most of the AI chat tools, there's AI magic there, but it's not an AI agent that's working when you're not there. And I think that's a really big distinction in terms of where people are at today. Like a lot of people just haven't got to using agents that are running long term beyond just waiting like a couple seconds for a chat here or there, or maybe like a deep research or, something on Perplexity. What are your thoughts? Did you notice this gap too between people?
I notice it in myself. Like I have to move to a place where agents are working when I leave the computer. I have like an OpenClaw set up. My default is to go to a chat box. I think there's kind of like, I think that's one component of it, which is like the chatting piece. And I think what OpenClaw has added is like a couple other components. So like one of them is webhooks or hooks. So like when something happens, I want you to pay attention to it, which is also what somebody does when they're like a human and not just like a computer waiting for you. Like right now, it's very reactive. I get a message in my inbox. That's an event. It's a notification for me. I open in my inbox. I deal with it. I think the interesting bit about the webhook is like now my agent has an inbox. So that's a new thing and it can respond to that inbox. The other thing is just a heartbeat. So yeah, it's weird to think about like your chat app opening up and saying, what's going on right now? But that's how OpenClaw works is it's got like a timer and like, depending on how many tokens you want to spend, you can wake it up every half an hour, 4 times a day. But the notion that it would wake up, be conscious of like the things that are going on, the new threads, like information from the internet, and then choose to act or not based on that information at the moment is a new thing. Yeah, and then I think the always on nature of it, which is that now when I chat with it, I know these things. So like I know that now it's going to wake up and I know that it's going to get these webhooks. I'm not there yet. Like I don't. That's not how I use my OpenClaw yet. I'm still like at the point where I'm like, click on a button on the screen and send me a screenshot. But I can see how it fits. Like I still do the chat thing. Still gonna have the chat GPT open up a session, ask a question. Um, but to be like, and we were talking about this before, but to have like a theory of mind for how my agent is working, that's going to be a learning thing for me for sure.
Same here. Like I'm seeing other people like further ahead on this. And I think it's partially because it's mostly with like dev tasks where you can get this like longer term runtime essentially of, uninterrupted. Hey, initially it was, an agent could do something for like 10 seconds before, the task quality would start to break down. And then it was it's 30, and then it was a minute, and then it was 5 minutes, and then it was 10 minutes. And now it's like 4 hours, right? And you project out the curve and it'll be like doing human work weeks unassisted, like go do this really hard task. And it's essentially going to like one shot it, or you're going to be able to, give it some edits and it'll clean it up in a couple hours, at the end of the week. Right. And so think about that in terms of as a manager being able to show up and, check in on someone's work once a week. Like that's a pretty high value or like high agency team member, if you don't have to check in on them too often, and you can give them like a week's worth of work or like a month's worth of work or a year worth of work, like that. Think about it. That's crazy. Especially if they can just be getting information from other areas that are kind of like course redirecting them as time goes on. It's like that old, what's that thing about like redirection where, if you're flying from New York to LA and you only look at the dashboard like 3 times, it's going to take you like, you have to do these massive course corrections. Whereas if you're constantly doing like little updates, you almost go in a straight line, to get there. It feels like there's some metaphor there with like what we're doing today.
Yeah, drift, I guess. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, drift
Well, I
is
mean,
the idea.
we have that, and so I think that like ChatGPT 3.5 comes out, and everybody's wow, this is cool, but like, oh, it's hallucinating, right? And that was like a big thing. Like, oh, some of the answers it gives you sound true, but are not. And so like then we had to adjust and like double check and add in sources and do a bunch of stuff to fix that. I think that same level of drift is going to happen with these always on models. But it's going to happen like a week, and like you come back in a week and it's like, yeah, I made the dating site that you wanted. You're like, what the hell? I was working on a SaaS like project. So there's just going to be like an incredible amount of drift without that like human kind of course correcting, and we'll have to like debug a bunch. I haven't seen that workflow in action yet. I've seen really good stuff that it works for maybe like 10 minutes and it comes out with a good result. But again, it's done a bunch of stuff where I'm like, you're going to have to rework this. So it's something we have to kind of play with, feel the edges, like it will be different types of planning around it. But I think one thing that will be a challenge is if you work for a week unsupervised, that's like a lot of tokens. And there is a point where you're like, I am spending as much tokens as it would be to hire a software engineer. So I kind of wonder, like, what is that kind of trade off of like how much human and how much machine should we have involved in any given task? But again, we'll play with it and find it.
Yeah, I wonder, and like the price of a token, is it going to go down? Is the token usage going to improve? Probably. Where does that net out? I think we can. I'm going to assume it nets out on the side of like it's cheaper still to use AI to do most code, and having a developer managing a bunch of like kind of like junior AIs. And the real question is, how cheap does a junior AI get compared to a more senior dev who becomes the manager of this team, right? Um, so I've been thinking about this idea too in terms of just like building products and trying to think through like workflow of, okay, if what we're primarily doing, like right now there's a moment, and this kind of like loops into my sort of like next big idea. Let's talk about Marshall McLuhan, right? And the idea that he shared with us. We talked about this a little bit last time, but I think we're at this moment with AI where it's like when TV came out and people just put plays on TV, right? Like it was not a moment where we knew what TV was yet. TV became something different. And then the internet showed up and we were putting brochures online, phone number, addresses, photos of shops, owners, cat pictures, right? Like it was brochureware. That was like a whisper of what the internet, actually became. And so this idea that the medium is the message, it takes a while using the medium to figure out what the message of that medium is. And I think we're still there, man. We're in the really early days. And so the first thing that we're doing, like our plays on TV or our brochures on the internet, before we understood what those things are today, I think are just like taking all the human jobs and workflow and automating all those workflows. Like that's what we're doing. And that's what we think AI is for today. And I think that that's a world changing starting point. Like there is a lot of juice to squeeze in that on its own. Don't get me wrong. It solves some massive problems. It creates some real value. It may create some massive problems and it may destroy some real value as well. But I think that we're at that moment and it's still
Which is
only
to
a
say,
sliver.
like when somebody put like a theater show on the TV, that was awesome. Like people at that moment were like, "This is nuts! I'm not at the show. Like this is so much cheaper than going to the theater, and this is like in London, and I can see it." It was just like mind blowing and so exciting, and so clearly like, "Wow, this is the power of this medium."
Yes.
Little did they know.
They were getting just like a hint of what it was actually, right? And if that pattern is true for like what we're feeling already today, it's like, dude, it's like we're just gonna be like just like it's gonna be wild, right? So I've been thinking about this, and okay, so what is it, right, about where we're going next? What does this medium of AI really want to become? And I don't think we can get there from a whiteboard. I don't think we can get there from a podcast, kind of like pontificating on what it's going to be. We're not going to predict it from a distance. We can only discover it by building, like by being in the products, by trying to make stuff and letting it reveal itself to us kind of like piece by piece, right? And, if McLuhan said the medium is the message, then I think the motion and the creation reveals the message over time. This is the idea that clarity follows action, and direction comes from movement. So I think that, our job as we build these things isn't to forecast like kind of like the final form of what AI is going to be with precision. It's to just jump into the medium, work with the best idea we have today, which is essentially taking human labor and trying to automate it, which again, like may create some serious problems. But yeah, basically, like, where we begin isn't going to be where we end up on this, but we just need to begin. Like, we need to start, we need to be working on stuff. And I think one iteration at a time, one customer conversation at a time, one signal at a time, that's how we get there. We can't see around the corner. We just got to walk around it. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, that this stuff is discovered through building. And I think you can see that at the model companies, right? So, like, the model companies are all scrambling for use cases. And, like, you can see Anthropic doubling down, like, on the coding thing. And that's how they got where they were, which was the right intuition, right? And now all the other model companies are like, oh, coding unlocks all these other possibilities. We shouldn't have
Mm-hmm.
started with, like, X, Y, or Z. We got to catch up with Anthropic. So yeah, the question is like, where do you start? And that's from the model perspective. But then on top of the model, you have applications, right? You're building out some kind of a wrapper, I guess you could say, or front end for this model. And the decisions you make there are going to there's like a path dependency where you're going to make some decisions that are going to fit you into a corner. And so I think every company out there that is thinking about AI is like, oh, we can be the wrapper for this thing. Like
Yeah.
we'll be like the front end. What, like, if you were starting from nothing, because like if you start with an existing business, you're like, obviously I'm gonna make it work for, I'll make it for work for construction workers, or I'm working on like city services, or I'll make it work for car salesmen. But if you were starting from nothing and you were saying like, how can I explore this new medium in a way that I will more likely reveal the inherent benefits of it. Like in the same way, like with a TV, you do close-ups. Like that was a really big deal. It's like, oh, you can do a close-up. That's crazy. We never thought about that before. Or like jump cuts or like fades or like establishing shots. Like all this kind of language had to be established. I think that's what me and you get excited about is like, what are the new patterns and pieces of the language that need to be established to like really push this to the next level? What use case would you start with if you wanted to explore that stuff? Or how
I
would you
don't
start on that?
I don't know if it comes so directly, like the connection between the end of where we're going to end up and what we're doing in the short term. In the short term, in terms of where to start, I think this is a really interesting question for every small business, medium business, like large business to do, is to say, okay, what can we automate here, right? One approach to that, and there's different strategies. So different people have different AI strategies, right? One approach is you say, okay, well, what's the thing that we spend the most money on today and is the most automatable? So you start to say, okay, well, do you need a body, to do this? If it's keyboard, video, and mouse, then you can just do it. And we have a lot of people doing this, so it's going to be expensive. Let's say you have a call center. Your number one expense is the people sitting there answering calls. So you start to say, okay, well, can we build an agent that can answer the calls, right? No brainer. Let's say that you're a lawyer and a huge amount of your staff is juniors who are paid to stay up all night reviewing case docs, is like to prepare something for you for the next day. It's like, well, is that really efficient? Are we getting the best value here? This is a good use case for AI, so you start to put it in there. And I think technically there's generally two places to add it. Either you go front of house and kind of make it more, this is the interface with the customer, this is uh, or back of house like bookkeeping and stuff, or delivery, right? So you've got kind of like sales and marketing, ops, delivery. And if you break up those like few pieces, delivery is always like, what are you as a business? Are you an agency? Are you a uh, uh, construction company? What is the thing that you do and that you sell as the core? And then there's all these enabling functions around that, essentially. So in my experience, going towards the core works when the core is really expensive to develop, to deliver, and highly automatable. Keyboard, video, mouse, right, are the core ways in which you actually deliver that. Otherwise, you say, okay, well, let's go. Where's the bottleneck in the system? So that's like strategy number two. First one, what's expensive? Let's do that. What do we spend a lot of time doing and what's expensive? Second one, where's the bottleneck in the system? Where are we start? Are we demand constrained or are we supply constrained? So that's like option number two. Option number three is just like, well, what is it that we're not doing today that we wish we could be doing? Let's add that to the business. Let's let the rest of the business run the way it should, but let's do the thing that we're not doing. I'll give you an example. We have this AI that we're building for plumbers and like all different home services businesses. All of them have a task, which is after the job is done and the technician leaves your house, they want to call up and say, hey, how did they do? Did they take off their shoes? Did everything feel like it was fixed? Did it feel like it was friendly? Did they leave the place clean? Would you leave us a Google review? Could I ask you to give us a testimonial here on the phone? I'll type it in for you, etc. That's called a happy call. Nobody does happy calls because they're just too busy. They can never get around to it. So now you've got this use case of, okay, we could do that now. It's a good part of the business. The rest of the business is kind of running okay. Like we're not like dying in the rest of it. Let's just add this and then lift the whole, value of the business in some way overall. So those are the three ways that I know in terms of deciding what to do next. What's expensive? Where's the bottleneck? And then just what aren't we doing that we would like to be doing that we might be able to automate and add in?
I guess with all three of those, you're kind of like looking at an existing industry where maybe those things are like more quantifiable, right? So like you can look at a business, you can look at its P&L, and you can be like, this is the costs. That makes sense. I think, I guess going back to the metaphor of TV, I'm curious now. Like, was there a director who was like? I mean, there was the Rosebud movie, Citizen
Uh,
Kane. Like
Citizen
that was
Kane,
like,
Orson Welles.
oh yeah, that was a really big breakthrough in terms of filmmaking.
Hmm.
And he chose to do it about like kind of like this historical robber baron kind of guy, Hearst, I guess. And so it was a kind of a dramatic movie. That's where they pushed the medium forward. I guess with brochureware, it's like what were the first companies to adopt like the internet? I don't know what were they? Nerds. I don't know.
It was nerds, man. It was nerds. But then everybody needed a website all of a sudden. It was like you had to get your like GeoCities website, and every small business, like just like local businesses, would be like setting up a website, and then they would add like a www to their business card. Like, remember that? Like that time when
Hmm.
that was like a thing where it's like, hey, we have a website. What's on your website? Oh, nothing really. Like it's
The same
our
stuff as the business
hours.
card.
Yeah, pretty much. Like,
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
there's like a carousel of pictures. You can scroll through it. Whoa, cool.
Mhm. But then people started building web applications, which is like the Amazon or
Exactly.
the Facebook or whatever, Google.
And we just didn't know that that's what it was going to be. That websites were going to be more, or the internet was going to be more about applications than it was about static messages, right? And I
Hmm.
think the same thing where I think we're looking at AI a lot now in terms of its intelligence, and let's take that intelligence and just apply it to human workflows. It's like, okay, well, that's one thing we could do, but there might be something there will be something different, something much deeper than that, as opposed to just adding a bunch of synthetic humans to the workforce. Like, don't get me wrong, we're doing that. That is happening. There's an industry. There are tens of thousands of companies being born on that, and hundreds of thousands of jobs, are going to be lost, on that one idea. That's not where we're going to end up, though. That's not the end of the story.
Right. Right. And I think that's what we're seeking out on this podcast. So if you have any ideas, please let us know and hit us up for what you think the future metaphor will be and what AI is truly meant to do.
Take a guess. Take a wild guess.
Yes.
I'm not going to take a guess here today. Let's talk about some of the stuff that's going on in the world, more specifically, like, what are people thinking about? What are people writing about? What are you seeing? Why don't you share some links with us?
Why don't I share some links? And these will all be in the notes. So I'll share this window here. Okay, so let's start here. So this was a kind of tweet that I thought was really good, and I've been thinking about this since I don't know 2 days ago. So my biggest current workflow for making iOS apps is extracting out all my core functionality into a standalone Swift package, which is to say into just functions, no UI. Making it into a CLI, which is the command line interface, giving Claude access to that CLI, and going to town. If you do any kind of on-device ML or have lots of headless services, this is extremely helpful and a better way than just waiting for rebuilds. So this is like a very technical way to say, like, I just want to test it with a CLI. But
Mm-hmm.
I think there's something else here, which is maybe the CLI is the future. So what we're seeing is, like, I guess a couple of CLIs is the big one that, is the breakthrough is Claude. Now, like, everybody who's never touched a terminal is using Claude CLI, which is you just type in Claude, and then there's a bunch of magic words you can say to Claude via the CLI, right? So that's all. It feels like 1970s computing, right? But what's interesting about it is that in a world where computers ultimately run on a terminal, and the fastest way to get something, whether that's a URL or like run a process, like convert this set of images to a video, or like basically anything you do on the computer, the fastest way to do that is in a terminal. AI knows all the commands, and then this is perhaps the base on where your UI is derived from. So like maybe your UI is just like built on the fly based on the CLI that you're using. So that was like one thought. And it kind of brings me back to what we were just talking about, which is like how do you kind of design for this stuff, or like what is it meant to be used for? Like maybe this whole internet UI um, path was just like a side quest. Like maybe all the UIs that we're seeing on the internet are just kind of like a silly side quest we'll look back on and be like, everybody made their own UI. This is weird.
Mm.
Like, look at all these old documents, and people put so much effort into these like business cards and stuff. Why didn't they just use, NFC? So I think it'll be like that's one world where you don't make custom UI. Instead, it's like built for you on the fly using these command line interfaces. And as a developer or dev or designer, you're actually just defining what functions you want to provide to people. Like I want to provide the ability to respond to appointments and book appointments. I'd like to like get these fields, and then when they're done, I want to send them over here to this human to check that the appointment is on the right calendar or something. So yeah, that was one thought.
So I love the term headless. Let's define this in this context a little bit. You have lots of headless services on device ML. What's the context here for those use cases? Or like, just help me understand what Tyler means when he talks about that, because I'm very interested in, especially like headless services.
Yeah, a headless service, it means a service without UI. So it means, so like you can run Chrome, for example, in the background, and you can have it like click on things, but it's never actually rendering to a screen. So headless means like I'm running this service and I just need the output from this service. So yeah, it would like in this example on your phone, you might take a screen, like a photo, and it's like, find if there's like a hot dog in here. And so now it goes to this headless service that's going to like take the image, do some edge detecting, like put that into an algorithm, figure out if it's a hot dog or not, and then spit it back. Right. And so like that's the headless service, is like the hot dog or not hot dog. And there's all kinds of stuff like that on your phone. The classic challenge with engineering is like the UI always gets mixed up with these like back end services. But
Mm.
and so what has happened is like we've kind of like gone to a UI first development approach, which is like, show me the flows, like make up the mocks. Like I want to see where the buttons are. How does the
Yeah.
login screen work? What if I need to reset my password? We design all those things and then we implement it. But perhaps the future is just like, you actually just define what your CLI is going to do. And then you tell the AI to make a UI.
On the fly, yeah. So actually, this is really, really interesting. Okay, I'm feeling this. This is pretty exciting. So something I've been complaining about a lot recently is internally. So we're building 10 products at a time, right? Like every week, I get to look at 10 products and how they're kind of progressing. And the one thing I'm noticing across all of them is they feel like old software to some extent, right? Of like, we all know, everybody on the team is well aware of where we want to go. We want to move towards this magic, wand type scenario where, it's the team member that's working with you, and, your team member doesn't necessarily have a dashboard or like, a sidebar menu, right? Like those are parts of old software. Like those are old, like artifacts that don't necessarily apply to what we're trying to do in the future. And to try to show some of these ideas to a customer without building the whole thing and actually making all the functionality and the AI work, which is still like not like a non-zero cost, right? Like for some of the stuff we're trying to do, like we would need access to data, and then we'd have to like run it a bunch of times. Like it wouldn't just work. This is like these use cases aren't one-shottable, quote unquote, yet. So what I've noticed is that it feels like a lot of the demos that we're giving feel like old software. They don't feel like this future approach. And a lot of like, if you use Replit, it pushes out kind of these old interfaces. And it was when you use Claude Code, it's like, it's trained on that. So it's giving you these interfaces. Yet I feel like we're being pulled towards something new. And every time something comes out, I'm like, do we need this screen? Can we strip this away somehow? Like, can we just get back to like, what's the thing they're asking for and how do we get it to them, quicker? How could there be less, visible here? How could this feel more like, it's a shop and you parked your car in it, and then when you got your car, it was fixed. You weren't, following an interface that gave you like a list of everything that was happening while it was happening and trying to direct the mechanic on what they were doing, right? Like this is the people want the outcome, like you said. And so, sorry, to try to bring my point down, I'm kind of rambling a little bit. It feels like none of us are quite sure from an interface perspective how to come up with software ideas and demo them and validate them in a really cheap way without actually building the whole software yet in this kind of new style. And also, what does the new style look like? Like there's
Mhm.
kind of like 2 or 3 moving targets here in product development for me today.
Yeah, and I think that one like misstep for me is like maybe the future is not more UI, right? Like maybe it's not like a cooler UI. Like I love the Apple Glass thing, but like maybe that's not the future. Like that I'm maybe that's part of the future, but like there's just this other world I'm thinking about with this CLI conversation is like I'm seeing people use command line interfaces and I'm thinking this should be an autocomplete. I shouldn't be typing it, I should be talking it
Yeah.
and I should know what the inputs could be because somebody's telling me. And like those fields should just manifest. They should just appear. And so I think that like there's 2 business models that interfere with this step change, which means that it's an opportunity for people starting out. So one is if you're not looking at it, I can't show you ads, right? Like most of the internet is funded by ads. But if you're using a command line interface, it's very hard to put an ad into that thing because I do a command and I expect an output. And like maybe there's an ad appended to the video that I processed
Yeah.
or something, but it's much harder than just like showing you something because our whole internet is designed to like to show ads before stuff. So that's one piece. The other thing is, if you're using a CLI, I can't really charge you. Like it's harder to do charge. You can do authenticated sessions and stuff, but it's kind of harder to charge people for something that's a command line because it's very easy for me to remake your product. So I have to look this up. So Figma um, made in a weekend. There was this dude.
No.
This
No.
is this is a funny story.
No. No
I don't know if I
chance.
can find it. Oh man, blocked. There was this dude who had a plugin for Figma, and it would take your Figma code and it would like build it into React and Tailwind and stuff. Um, but then Figma blocked him. And then he was like, "Cool, you blocked my plugin. I'll just remake Figma." So
My
he,
God.
in a weekend, he just like remade Figma. I'll find the link. And yeah, he built his own Figma in 3 days. So I haven't used this, but oh, it's Open Pencil. Okay, cool. So this relates to the other topics I want to talk about. But yeah, this is the response. So that's what I mean about the CLI is like, yeah, cool. You're selling a CLI. I can reverse engineer that in a weekend because there's no UI in it. It's not that complex, right? It's like text in, text out, or
Mm.
binary in and binary out. So those are like the 2 business models that are, I think, preventing us from thinking about what the future might be because we need people to use these UIs, right? We need people to like log into these UIs.
First, that's wild. The fact that the dude rebuilt Figma, and I remember a couple years ago us talking about Figma and being like, this is such an engineering masterpiece that could only be done by a company that was founded by like, a 0.01% engineer. Like that's what this is. And the fact that now that engineer is available to all of us through Claude Code, essentially, like he's on all of our team. Like that is no longer an advantage to be a 0.001% engineer. And like when they did that, like Figma, that was like a, the entire Adobe Creative Suite, or at least a good portion of it that was relevant to essentially like UI and web design first, I guess, right? Like the fact that they could take that and put that into a browser, I just remember being flabbergasted, and that was like a thing, and how much money they must have spent to be able to get that done, and the fact that one guy could do that in a weekend. Dude, what timeline is this?
I mean, and it's really fast. Like, and are there collaborators? I don't even know. It's so nuts. But I just love the checks because I love the checks and balances of technology, which is if it sucks and you're being a gatekeeper, I will just remake it. Like I just love that check on things. And
It's like
so this
pure
is like the
market
check.
forces in a way, right? Like, a
Yeah.
lot of we talk about this in terms of moats a lot, and like, how can you build some sort of moat, and how can you build some sort of competitive advantage? And I think you shared a link, or, I saw one recently, which was around, there used to be two product strategies. One was be first. The second one was be better. And it's like, there's no point in being first anymore because anybody could copy you at any given time. And so you just need to be really, really good. Like that's the only product strategy moving forward is you have to understand what people want and then you have to give it to them as well as possible. Now, I'm going to push back on that a little bit. I think that that's a little bit myopic and that comes from a product person. If you're thinking about the business overall, you have a lot more levers to pull in terms of how to be a better business. You have brand, you have customer service, you have distribution, right? Like there's all these components that product people sometimes forget about. I think that he's probably right just in terms of the product strategy piece of your product needs to be better. But as far as business strategy, it's maybe a little myopic.
I mean, so notably, he made Figma. I think he was like the main designer that made Figma. Um, and I think, yeah, it is a product mindset. Well, would you say that brand and marketing are part of product, or is that just like a product centric way to view the world?
It's definitely product centric way to view it, but everybody stands where they stand, right? So, accounting is going to say, well, product and brand are part of accounting. So it's like, well, we add up the numbers without you guys or without us, there's no business. It's like, oh, well, it's kind of true, right? So everybody stands where they stand. They are points of view.
Hmm.
I think that brand is what people think about you when you're not in the room. And do they think that you're uh, really interesting and great and they have loyalty to you? Or do they think that you're completely replaceable and they're ready to, switch to anyone else at the drop of a hat? There's aspects to that on its own. The product can, of course, deliver something on that brand. Like it can be a part of the brand building component, or the brand is built in part by, the product if you want to put that first. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. They're very intertwined. They're part of the same thing.
Yeah, but it is a timely piece of advice. There used to be two playbooks for commercial software, so that's good. He frames it as commercial software: be first to market or make the best product. Being the first was important, yet so many software companies operate this way. We must ship by this time or next month or we'll lose. With this shallow way to build. Now with AI tools, we've gone from lol, nice JavaScript, try again, to damn, it's a nice C program, take the wheel. So I think he's basically saying the ability to go to mark first is like now everybody can do that. So like I think the point here is that there was two strategies, now there's kind of one, because being to first to market is not going to put you ahead of your competitors because everybody can be first to market. So like, what are you going to spend time on? Yeah, what do you think about that?
Again, in the product centric perspective, I think he's right. I think you do need to have like a really, really great product that the bar is always going to be high and people are going to try to work around whatever else you have in terms of a moat. So there's this war for context that we talked about last time of like, how do you add more context to a product? If you have if you're in a position where you can aggregate context. So let's say that I'm running a business that is front desk and I have access to all of the docs and all of the systems, and I have unique access to just all of the phone calls, right? I have context that maybe some of the other systems don't have. And so I hold on to that, which allows me to be more useful and more, put my intelligence to more work, right? It's going from you took the smartest person in the room and you put them in a black box and you asked them to solve a problem versus you help them understand complete situational awareness and what's going on in a business, right? So, sorry, I don't mean to get off track here. What I'm trying to say is that context is so important to being able to build a good product. And oftentimes that comes from how you position what you're going to be doing. That there are certain tasks that you can do that if you do those, maybe in addition to the thing you were trying to do originally, you can collect more context. Therefore, you can make the original thing you were doing even better and build up a bit of competitive advantage there. And if you're doing that and someone else can't do it, then they can't do some of the other things that you could start to do because you hold that context, right? So it gives you a competitive advantage on the product development itself when you have that context. So I think context is really, really important here. It's not just about developing stuff. It's about, well, where does it fit into the business and what do you have access to be able to add value to these businesses? And I'm generally thinking business to business here, but I think the same concept probably applies with B2C products where if you're the, AI pin that theoretically OpenAI and Johnny Ive are developing that just records everything I'm doing and has ultimate context into everything in my life, like it's heard and seen everything I've heard and seen, like how much more context do you want, right? Like
Yeah,
you're going to be able to build whatever you want from having that.
I think that's right. Increasingly, however, I think that's about now that I have options, who do I want to give that context to? So, with that said, this is a link which is switch to Claude without starting over. So now, like
Ooh,
what we thought was the moat is now a commodity. So I can import from Gemini, I can import from ChatGPT, I can import from uh, you know any other service, and now all that
nice.
context comes with me, right? Which is a good move for consumers. But to your point about like the special context you have, you're gonna have to think about like, is it context that's not the users? So like you could imagine I have an inventory of a bunch of electronical components. And like that's my context is that I have this industry knowledge that you can't just export. But increasingly, I think anything AI can touch will be importable. So I think this is just an interesting move is like the portability between these chatbots.
We see so much, like, especially in, there's a lot of existing systems, like, especially systems of record. Like, if you pick any industry, right, like, pick dental, there's a bunch of systems of record there. And they're all very protective of their data because they know as soon as they start letting this stuff flow everywhere, they're cooked, right? Like somebody's going to take it all out and stop using their software because it sucks, like because that's what I would do, right? Like I don't want to use this crap. Like it's like let's build a better, system of record. And they're like, nah, we're just gonna, kind of hold on to everything, and or we're not gonna play nice. We're not gonna allow this data out and give you access to it. Epic, all these like healthcare, what are they? EMRs or EHRs, like electronic medical records or electronic health records. These systems, and then look anywhere else like SAP, there's always these like systems of record that suck. They're so old, they're legacy, and they've built these walled gardens around the data, right? Now we're seeing kind of like a system of intelligence being built on top. And that's where the opportunity where a lot of people are jumping in of being like, well, I'm not going to be able to get this data out, but I can via API work with the data to accomplish a lot of things. And this idea of the system of intelligence is one that we're looking at a lot of, okay, well, that's a door until all this data starts to flow everywhere. Or you can rebuild it just by being the system of intelligence on top for long enough, right? Where you've seen it all at some point in
Yeah.
time.
Or you could just run this prompt. Like, I think it's funny that this whole product is actually just this prompt you put in here that says, I'm moving to another service. I need to export all my data. List all the memory I've stored about me. Add dates to it. So like this is like the exploit. Is just put that into your thing and then paste it into Claude. So these like the barrier, the technical barrier to do things is so much lower, which means you have to work so much harder to have people want their context in your system or want to
Mm.
use your system on a daily. Um, So with that, I mean, I know we got a lot of links and low on time, but I want to like run through some options of Figma alternatives. So we looked at Open Pencil, which was made in a weekend. Um, there is also this one called pencil.dev, which is a live canvas that like as you're building, it's also making the code. This by the way is like my dream. Like Framer, Figma, I always hoped that they would do this, but they haven't done
Yeah.
it because everybody's got to focus. But this is like my dream. It's like the thing I'm
Dude,
designing is code.
very first job out of school, I remember at Blast Radius, I was making mock-ups in Photoshop, and I was like, this is for editing photos. Why can't I just make the website like here, right? Like, this is so silly. And then it had to go to these HTML, like I had to slice up all these images and I had to send it to the HTML guys. And the HTML guys had to write all this code and then they had to like go check it in the browser. And it was such a mess. And I'm glad that all that workflow has collapsed now to I have a few different ideas. And what I love about Pencil is it gives you essentially design alternatives, at the same time. I think that there's a gap here for me in terms of brand of saying, well, like, look, you're just giving me a bunch of different ideas, maybe for new projects where you haven't defined that stuff. It's good. But the idea of it's great. It's great. I love it. It's great. I'm not going to critique it. This is a
Yeah.
dream come true. We're there.
I to like full disclosure, I haven't tried this yet. I mean, I've opened it up and pushed stuff around, but I haven't actually tried it for anything. Uh, but again, it's like easy import, like design as code. This is the future. So here's another one. I don't know if you've heard of this one, paper.design.
I like
So
one
it's
is
a
called
similar thing,
pencil. The other one is called paper.
and the other one's called Open Pencil. So it's like, yeah, we're stuck in a metaphor. Um, so yeah, it's a similar thing. It's just kind of like, but it's you got your code buddy at your side. So it's this one I think is much more like open source, and like integrated with the AI terminal. But again, just like a different answer to how can I see the thing I built and then build the thing and like have that go back into AI. And then I just go back to our point about the CLI. Like, is the future move? Like, it's becoming so easy to make these boxes and arrows. Like, should we even be doing that? Like, I know that there is like an attention to the detail there, but AI also has like a good attention to detail. Like, will we be pushing boxes around? I don't know. Or is this like the temporary moving around chairs on the Titanic? I don't know.
I also don't know. I struggle between going between, well, all we need is a command line interface and all we need is outputs. And it's, I don't, I don't know if I'm sold on the idea that the easiest way to interact with something is the command line interface. It's like saying, for books, all we needed was text end to end on every page. Like that is one specific interface and it doesn't necessarily do everything we need it to do. So I'm without getting into it too far, I'm cautiously optimistic that we'll get more on the fly interfaces that do what we want when we want it, and don't need it if we can exert our preference here as we move forward is what I hope.
Yeah. Yep. And we'll only find out by playing with stuff. How much time we got left here?
We're at 48 minutes. Let's do 10. We got
Okay.
10 left. So you got 8 links, a minute each or something.
Yeah. So we spoke about design tools, talked about CLIs, talked about like future of craft and software. This is another chain in our Darwinian evolution of AI,
Yeah.
which is like maybe it's hardware. So this is looking at an assistant that runs OpenClaw on an ESP, basically an open, or no, this is a Pi Zero, so like pretty cheap piece of hardware, and you just talk to it. So like maybe, and it gives you some visual feedback, but maybe the future is actually much cheaper and smaller than we think it is. Like maybe we won't be
Mm.
using these computers. Maybe it is like just like a really cheap commodified piece of hardware that connects me with the agent I want to be talking to. So that's one thing.
I think that
Mhm.
that is this is shades of what we can expect from Johnny Ive, OpenAI, always on assistant type thing. I think that this is like somebody with way less money, way less time, just giving it a shot. Like, hey, I've kind of got this idea. And then the idea is also being channeled through the ether, through that, massive team with like $70 trillion to go build it, right? And it's just like these are the two outcomes from like the same idea that's just coming from the ether of the world through two different conduits at the same time, like how electricity was invented by multiple people at the same time, like Edison and Tesla, right? I think relativity was even potentially found almost at the same time by another guy as Einstein. Evolution was discovered twice, right? So I think to me, this feels like a second idea, or sorry, this is one idea, and we're going to see this expressed multiple times in the next X number of years, and someone's going to get credit.
Yeah, and part of it is compounding factors, which is like the more AI you have, the more you can use AI to design stuff cheaper, faster. And the more you do that, the more AI you have. I think there's that. But this is kind of like the hardware angle on things. This is somebody who used Ray-Ban Meta and OpenClaw to look around the world and route their vision into their OpenClaw. We're seeing, so that's a hardware piece. And then this is OpenClaw. But
so sorry, is it just building a ton of context then? Like everything that this person sees is like recording in some way? Like what's going on? What's the use case?
So it's just kind of like having this AI companion that can see what's in your glasses. So there's an SDK
Okay.
you can use, and you can take a photo. And so, yeah, it's like just taking photos and hands-free kind of way to do it, as well as there's a screen there. Yeah, you can kind of chat with it on WhatsApp on your glasses, and
All
it
right.
can like look at what you're doing. So that's
Rad.
kind of that is like the wearable version of this thing. And then this is controlling old phones with OpenClaw. So this guy is able to like turn the flashlight on or like just do different things on the phone, turn the volume out, vibrate. And it's got like root level access to these phones. You can see it's navigating itself. So this is kind of a pattern you would use as an automated test suite for like many phones. Like you could see in like a lab where you're like, just testing this app on a bunch of stuff. I think in some of the comments, there might be some of that, but, like this kind of thing where you're like, yeah, maybe it's for testing, maybe it's for like just bot farms. But the interesting bit is like maybe this becomes kind of a consumer approach, which is like I just want to control all my devices without touching them, and you can just control your phone from afar. Yeah. So
Awesome.
that's like these are alternate futures, like what does it look like? Will we be controlling our phones with tappity taps?
Well, and there's the second big idea in here is like computers learning how to use existing interfaces, right? So it's showing us what's happening on the interface, but is it working? Like if it opens up an app, it's using the app, not like the CLI and like function level under the UI, right? Like it's working through the UI. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's cool too. And like this is, I think, something that, people forget about is, as devs, do we need to build something that connects to, every API and only works in that route? It's like, no. There's another route, which is all the interfaces we built already. Just teach the computer how to use those and, click through them all. That's a track. There's wild bot farming stuff going on, like especially the, like top of funnel MarTech stack right now is so messed up. Like, dude, it's LinkedIn, like X, all these things are like turning into digital wastelands because of the amount of bots that are on there and the incentive structure to be able to just try to grab attention and then funnel a small portion of that attention towards whatever it is that you're selling that's related to what that person is. So to me, it's like, I don't know where that's going to end up, like what the end game is there. Like it's a constant battle. Like I've heard about these guys who rent hundreds of thousands of computers to build essentially, or to sort of like click on a bunch of LinkedIn things to just be able to extract all the data out of LinkedIn and then build lists of people to essentially market to, right? And that's LinkedIn's data. And they're just like using hundreds of thousands of bots and computers, like giant botnets to just get it out, right? Like we
Yep.
talked about extracting data. It's like, well, we're just going to steal it. We're just going
Yeah.
to, we're going to make it so they don't really know. And we're going to make these things really good at clicking on LinkedIn the way a human would
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
just extract all this info. So anyway, I think that's hilarious. And computers learning how to use interfaces that were built for humans is like a funny moment, right? Like it's just funny.
Yeah, it is like a side journey. It's like, okay, cool. Now we can go back to using the command line. I think the other piece is like, I don't know if you've heard of YouTube DLP.
Now, what's that?
It's this library, YT DLP. It's a download script for YouTube. So you basically put any like YouTube
Oh,
video
sick.
ID in there. And so
Or like a
like
channel or whatever, and then you can download it. And
totally. Yeah. And you can choose like you want audio or like the format, how many versions. This exists
so,
for other stuff
what are
too.
people using it for? Like, are people using this for learning purposes, or is it more like marketing purposes, like going backwards and trying to reverse engineer channels and figure out, you know, topic clusters and stuff like that? Like, what are people doing with it?
That's a good question. Like, I think some people just use it to, like, you see a YouTube video and you want to use it in something like a presentation
Hmm.
or something. Maybe they grab it, but it's kind of illegal.
Yeah.
You know, if
We're
you,
stealing all the content from the platforms. Apparently, that's what we do now, right?
yeah, and I think the last one kind of got blocked. Like, this is a fork of the older one. And so it's similar to like the torrent world where if you're like nerdy enough and want to deal with all the hoops,
Yeah,
uh, you can do this stuff. But I do think in the future, this will be much more accessible. This kind of like command line utility to avoid using websites. And I just mentioned that because, like, yeah, the AI is clicking around all these UIs, but like, there's only a very small step to be like, I'm doing this 10 times. I'm now going to make this into a CLI instead. And like, why would I run a bot when I can just kind of like programmatically do this? And then the other thing is you have web MCP, which is basically voluntarily turning your website into an
yep,
AI service. And
nice.
so we'll just have all this stuff colliding so that like
Yeah,
you design for agents rather than users primarily. And then what does that mean for the user interface?
yeah.
Is it voice? Is it text? Does it change? Yeah. So it's very
And
exciting.
there's a lot of incentives for people to do that. Like there's positive reasons to make your stuff more accessible to agents. And we haven't talked about SEO versus GEO or AI SEO, right? That this is a huge new ball game. Nobody really knows a lot about it yet. Exactly how SEO works within agents, but as a first step, make your website more accessible to other agents. If there's more searches showing up in agents, that's where you want to be, right? So there is a very positive incentive structure for a lot of businesses or products and services to show up in that way, and so to make your stuff more open. That's cool. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. I mean, the other links, I'll put them in the notes, but they're really just about OpenClaw and then some notes about design and AI. I think the last one I'll just say is somebody reverse engineered the Apple neural engine. And so I think
Dude,
increasingly our compute will be local, and that's like another, it's like basically deflationary for AI tokens if you can run everything on your local machine.
right. Yeah, it's like, yeah, you don't have to, if you already have a computer sitting around that has a bunch of cycles in it that you're not using, that's money in the
Hmm.
bank, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and we
But
all
will we
have it.
look back and be like, why were we not using our computers when we weren't at our desks? It's so crazy.
Yeah, yeah. It's like, remember SETI, Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, and how
Yes. Yeah.
you would
Yeah.
install the thing, and it was like doing this huge job of like searching the entire sky for aliens and all these little like code chunks that you would download. And that I feel like, to me, that was the first big distributed computing project. And the fact that, oh, okay, is coming back again, distributed computing. Yeah. So you're just adding yourself to a botnet of like, this yeah, okay, cool. That's yeah, yeah. It's true, right? It was all a cover story. Yeah, we'll make sure your house stays at 21.5 degrees. No problem. All right, man. Thanks for educating me this week. It was always super fun to talk about this stuff. We'll see you next week. Thanks everyone for learning in public with us.